What if I told you that the world's great constitutional dilemma today is not about markets or war or democracy? It's about faith. It's about how to manage identity without suppressing it, how to honor difference without letting it turn into division, how to let people believe deeply, culturally, spiritually while still protecting the rule of law. That's the crisis. That's the question. And India, with its all its contradictions, complexities, chaos, might just have the answer. I welcome you all to India 800, How Constitutional Dharma Can Shape the Next World Order, Episode 6, which includes secularism, pluralism, and the Indian model of harmony. Part 1 of it is the secularism myth and the Indian alternative. Let's begin by naming the elephant in the room. Indian secularism is not Western secularism. It's not meant to be, and it shouldn't be. In France, secularism means laicite, a rigid separation of church and state. No turbans, no hijab, no visible faith in public life. In the US, it's about the freedom from religion and the freedom of religion. But mostly in individualistic terms, the state cannot endorse a religion, but the individual is supreme and belief is often privatized. Now ask yourself, does that work in India? Can you privatize something as deeply cultural and communal as belief in India? Can you ignore temples, mosques, gurudwaras and churches? In a land where festivals are public, rituals are social and spirituality is embedded in everyday life? Of course not. So here's the truth. India never adopted secularism in the Western sense. What it adopted was a pluralism of Dharma, not an artificial neutrality, but a living balance. A civilizational acknowledgement that diversity is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be nurtured. Part 2 of this lecture is about the constitutional foundation, Articles 25 to 30. Now let's talk law. The Indian Constitution is not shy about religion. It doesn't run away from it, it wrestles with it. And that's the brilliance. Article 25 to 28 guarantee freedom of religion, not just belief, but practice, propagation, and profession, not in private, in public too. But, and this is critical, subject to public order, morality, and health, which means your faith matters but not at the cost of civic harmony. Article 26 allows religious denominations to manage their own affairs, but also ensures they follow the law of the land. Then you have Articles 29 and 30, protecting cultural and educational rights of minorities. So religious and linguistic communities can preserve their identity while being fully Indian. This is not secularism as subtraction. It's secularism as symphony, not either or, but yes and. Part 3 is Dharma, the hidden philosophy of life and let live. Here's where it gets deeper. The real reason this Indian model works is not just legal, it's philosophical, it's dharmic. In Indian thought, Dharma is not just a religion, it's not sectarian, it's not dogmatic. It means balance, natural order, mutual responsibility. That's why the Constitution doesn't ban religion. It doesn't pretend it doesn't exist. It regulates it, it protects it, and it limits it when it turns oppressive. The model is live and let live, worship and let others worship, believe and let belief evolve. The state becomes a referee, not a player. It doesn't impose uniformity, it maintains fairness. That's the essence of dharmic secularism. Rooted not in atheism but in pluralism, rooted not in the fear of religion but in faith of and in coexistence. Part 4 is guest contribution or views of the guest, which I'll dictate about. India's secularism is unique because it embraces difference. The court has ruled on cow slaughter, temple administration, hijabs, and even firecrackers, not to ban religion, but to balance rights with duties. In Indian traditions, pluralism is not a new invention. It's ancient. We have always lived with diversity. The Constitution simply reflects that deeper cultural truth. Another next part is about what the world can learn, a model for religiously complex societies. Look at the world today. The US is torn between evangelicals and secularists. France can't reconcile Muslim identity with its rigid laissez. Pakistan, Iran, Israel, all struggling with how much theocracy is too much. Even Europe is rethinking multiculturalism after years of failed integration. Now look at India. Messy, yes, chaotic often, but still astonishingly plural. Every major world religion lives here in public view, and despite all our challenges, and the system still holds. Why? Because our secularism is not Western, it's dharmic, flexible, contextual, humane. We don't erase identity to protect law, we harmonize identity within law. That's the model post colonial, multi ethnic, religiously plural societies can learn from. Let us talk about case studies. Let me give you a few real world examples. First is Bano case of 1985. This was the moment Indian secularism was tested. A Muslim woman sought maintenance under secular law. The court ruled in her favor, but political backlash led to legislative reversal. A painful moment, but one that forced the country to ask, how do you balance personal law with constitutional morality? Second case is Sabarimala case of 2018. Here, the court ruled that women must be allowed into a temple, upholding equality over custom. It sparked national debate, but also reflection on where tradition ends and constitutional rights begin. Third is Triple Talaq of 2019, which was declared unconstitutional, then criminalized. Again, not to attack religion, but to uphold justice within religion. Each of these cases is messy, controversial, but they show one thing: India's secularism isn't passive, it's active, constantly negotiated, constantly evolving. Next part is about what India must do next, a call to action. So, where do we go from here? If India wants to position itself as a moral and constitutional leader, it must double down on its unique pluralism. Here's what that looks like. 1. Export the Indian model not through sermons but through law schools, diplomatic forums, and interfaith platforms. Let the world see a secularism that doesn't erase faith. Strengthen minority protections not as appeasement but as constitutional fulfillment. When minorities feel secure, democracy becomes stronger. Third is codify uniform civil code with sensitivity, not to bulldoze diversity, but to modernize with inclusion. UCC must be just, but also pluralistically crafted. 4. Frame Dharma in public discourse, not as religious dogma, but as a civic balance. Dharma must become the language of 21st century secularism. Now, here's my closing thought, the Indian answer. Here's the truth. India doesn't need to choose between faith and law. It doesn't need to choose between pluralism and unity. It doesn't need to copy France or America or China or any other country. Because India has Dharma, a system that's ancient yet modern, spiritual yet legal, flexible yet firm. When the world burns in identity wars, India can offer not perfection but possibility. A vision of secularism that isn't anti-religion. A pluralism that isn't shallow tolerance but lived harmony. That's the India the world needs, and that's the India we must protect. Not faith versus law, dharma over division. This was episode 6 of India at 100, how constitutional dharma can shape the next world order. In our next episode, we take on economic justice through the lens of constitutional morality. Until then, subscribe, share, and reflect, because the next hearing is always coming. Thank you.